What's up, everyone? This is episode 4 of my Guild Wars 2 series. This episode will be about underwater combat. To my knowledge, Guild Wars 2 will be the first MMORPG ever to have such an immersive underwater combat system. Anyway, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Also, please don't forget to rate the video, comment the video, and subscribe for more videos like these in the future. Thanks.
This is underwater combat in Guild Wars 2. So you notice as our character goes down into the water, their skill bar has actually changed out, and they've swapped weapons to a completely different skill set that comes available. And we've got a new set of underwater skills that take advantage of the Z-axis the character has available to them. So, for example, you can throw out mines here that explode into a little harpoon gun, and you've got a torpedo that you can fire out of it there on your first skill. Skill 5 is a net that your character can put up to trap things that come through there, to get the creatures that are coming up or down below you. And the basic idea behind this is that we wanted to take combat that you normally find on ground in a traditional MMO that is usually, it involves a little bit of jumping, but it's mostly handled on the 2D access level. And we wanted to take advantage of the fact that we have this 3D game space available to you underwater. And to build a bunch of skills and movement and abilities that really play to use that. In a traditional MMO, when you're underwater, what you end up finding typically is that there's not a lot there to experience. You know, your underwater experience as you go down, you have a breath meter, there's not a lot of content down there, and underwater is just kind of like an additional thing thrown into the game. And for us, we wanted this to be one of the key features of Guild Wars 2. So every single profession has new skills that come available to them when they're underwater that they can take advantage of that really use this whole 3D axis. There is a ton of content that we placed in our underwater areas. So for example, ahead of you here, there is a shrine to the god Malagan, which these little whale people down here called the Quagan worship. And sometimes pirates will come and attack this shrine and try to kill all the Quagan that are there. And this is a dynamic event that you can experience just like in the normal game world, but these also happen underwater. And in this one, you're going to have pirates that come down and attack and drive the Quagan away. And if you protect them, you can get blessings from the little shrine to their god. So a big part of underwater is just having that sense of exploration and discovery. So as you're swimming around underwater in our game, there are a ton of little hidden areas that you can find and little caves and creatures hiding in them. And you can actually find and kick off dynamic events inside of these different areas when you get into them as well. So we want to just have a whole lot of different content that you can find as you're exploring through and going through the game world. So one other interesting thing about combat underwater is above ground, if you tap the movement skills one direction rapidly, you're going to dodge out of the way of stuff. Now underwater you can do the same thing, but you rapidly swim out of the way to dodge out of the way of attacks. So for example, you can see our character here is rapidly dodging to avoid the fish, and then has got it caught in the net, and has been blasting away at it from a distance here.
Dive into the water and explore around. We have a number of dynamic events that actually take place solely underwater. And now, if you notice, as soon as you jump into the water, you actually are locked to the surface plane. So you can actually just swim around on the surface and explore. You don't have any weapon skills available to you because you're not in a position to fight. So if you want to engage in combat, you either have to get onto land or dive underneath just by looking down and swimming. So now, as you can see, the skill bar has been replaced with a number of underwater combat skills that are tied to the weapon which we have equipped, which right here is a spear gun. There are a number of different underwater weapons that have their own skills, and Oh, it looks like I'm getting bit by a shark. Okay. When you go into a down state underwater, instead of just simply laying on the ground, you actually go into something that's, you know, like a drowned state, and you have a limited amount of time to get to safety. You can swim to the surface and regenerate your health and escape by swimming away. And one of our newer races are the Quaggins. They're actually amphibious, so they can go underwater and above.
I'm John Peters. I'm one of the game designers on Guild Wars 2, and this is a little bit of an underwater combat demo. One of the first things you'll see is we have this surface swimming mode, so I can just kind of swim along on the surface, you know, minding my own business. When you're ready to go underwater, you kind of just turn, and when you reach a threshold, you just kind of submerge underwater. And you can see right here my skills on my skill bar have changed over. I've got a new weapon. This is a spear that's on my back. I can pull that out, and conveniently I'm being attacked by a drake. So you can see my skills are very different underwater. I have one of the underwater weapons is a spear. That's one of the ones that the Necromancer can use. You can use it to stab this drake. He's got a couple of different skills. One where you can kind of spin around and do a big AoE attack. A big life-stealing buff that I can put on me, and then some different kind of stabs and throws. This is a way I can like pull a guy to me and cripple him. I've actually now been attacked by a number of drakes, so I'm gonna concentrate on fighting them for a second here. One thing that's nice about the underwater combat as well is that the creatures are different. So if I pulled these drakes out of the water, they'd be breathing fire at me, but of course you can't breathe fire underwater. So what we do is we create a scenario where underwater the creatures have very different skills. You'll see these drakes doing different swimming around and doing different kinds of attacks than you'd see them doing on land. One of the big drake attacks underwater is a big swooping spin attack that I'm about to trigger from this brood mother. I'm actually fighting a big drake boss right here. So there she goes, she's swimming off, and then she comes back and whips her tail, and you can see she stuns me. I'm low on health, so I'm going to use my healing skill. So I can now switch over to my other weapon set. This is our castery weapon set called the Trident. So under here I've got skills that, create a bleeding area. I can steal life from them. I can entomb them and make them sink to the ground. So I cast this spell. So this takes a lot of advantage of our 3D stuff. We have skills that can sink the player as well as bring them back up. So those are called floating and sinking, and they kind of take the place of some of the things we do on land. So you can see the underwater environments are all very different and recognizable as underwater. All these leaves coming down, and actually as the broodmother moves, you can see her moving these tangled vines that are under the water here. This is a necromancer skill that charges up a bunch of power. Oh, she just stunned me. Charges up a bunch of power and then sucks in and deals a bunch of damage and freezes enemies underwater. So I'm going to sink her again. Now this is going to take a little while because it's a boss fight. So one of the most important things, which I was going to say first, but I'll get to now that I had some creatures to deal with, is, for us, a lot of games underwater, it's a lot about breathing and breathing monitors, and there's really nothing fun about breathing. It's mostly just a tedious thing that you have to pay attention to. And so what we've done is we've kind of removed that. I'm going to pull up my hero panel. I'll try and escape this broodmother so we don't fight her the whole time. In my hero panel, you can see there's a underwater equipment piece called your aqua breather. It's your underwater breathing apparatus. So I'll pop out of the water for a second to get away from her. Oh, so yeah, see, she came up on land here, and you can see she's breathing fire, and it's like the battle has completely changed. So, so the underwater breathing apparatus allows you to breathe anytime you're underwater. So you just go under. You don't have to worry about dealing with different attacks. You don't have to worry about what's going on with whether or not you have enough breath to survive underwater. So I can just pop back under. Don't have to worry about my breath at all. So of course, when you're fighting a big creature like this, on land we have what we call the downed state, which is when you run out of life, your character is lying on the ground and can kind of fight to survive and come back. If you kill something, it'll get back. We didn't really think that it made sense to be lying on the ground underwater. So kind of what we did it is that when your health hits 0, you go into what we call a drowning state. They knock your breathing apparatus off, and you are slowly losing life as you have a little time to either kill something to come back by having an ally come to you and res you, or as I'm going to show you right now, because they're about to hit my health low enough. What you can do is you can actually, in the underwater, res yourself by, it says swim to the surface. So I can make my way up to the surface, and it may be difficult with creatures hitting me, but yeah, you can see I can swim to the surface, and because I was just drowning, that it lets me to catch my breath up here and, then dive back down and continue fighting. So underwater is a little bit more forgiving in that way too. Obviously there's a lot of things you have to deal with the Z-axis, but it kind of lets us, allow players to just kind of get down here and enjoy the content that we've built down there. There's a lot of underwater content in the game, especially because of the depth. It takes up a lot of space just because it's a 3D environment, and so there are places where you can literally swim down for 45 seconds, a minute, down into these deep, deep trenches in the water, and there's events going on down there, and vendors, and whole cities of different races that live under the water. So the Necromancer has his special Death Shroud ability. He also has this ability underwater, and he can use it to do this, to kind of perform as kind of a secondary health bar to make him more durable, as well as just give him access to some different skills. So he kind of gets a lot of the mechanics that the professions have, they share in their underwater counterparts, so that you kind of don't have to relearn the profession. We didn't want it to feel like it was a completely different game, but at the same time we want you to feel like there's a reason to be underwater and there's something different about it. There's actually, if you get a close-up of the face, you can see her breathing apparatus with the bubbles coming off, and it's pretty cool. So this is the casting weapon Trident. There are 3 underwater weapons. The other one is a harpoon gun. Necromancers cannot use that weapon, however, so they go between tridents and spears. The utility skills as well, some of them work underwater, some of them do not, and it kind of just depends on what you have. So if I go back up to the land just really quickly, you'll see on land I have these utility skills set up, and I've got a Bone Fiend and Plague Signet. But what we do is underwater, when you dive, we let you kind of set your skill bar differently. So this skill I wanted to keep, but underwater I wanted to use this other utility skill, Blood is Power, if I want to, which it lets me change this skill, but without conflicting with the choices that I've made on land. So, alright, so I'll just kind of swim around. This is a big giant fish, one of the cooler looking creatures under here. These guys are neutral, so they won't attack you unless you attack them. I particularly love their eyes. So, there's drakes up here that I want to try and avoid, since we've seen a bunch of those. And we'll kind of make our way through this area. I think I showed that when you do pass underwater, or when you do come out of the water, you get this splash screen effect to kind of show you that you've come out, and then the water fades away and drips off. And similarly, when you go in, there's that first bubbles. There's a large variety of underwater creatures. In this map, we'll see shark and some fish, these big gulper fish, drakes, crabs. Some of these things are amphibious as well. So these guys called skelk, they live underwater, but they can actually come on the surface too. So let's take a look at one of this. So that's a skill that poisons him, and then I can cast these bleeds on him. The Necromancer's a lot about stacking up different kinds of degen to work on guys. So it's my big tomb spell. It's like the big explosion. A lot of other things work pretty similarly underwater. There's just the looting. Everything else works a lot like it did before. Here's a little bobbing chest that's kind of just floating under there. So that was our underwater demo for Guild Wars 2. Hope you enjoyed it.